Well, good afternoon now. It's like 5 minutes after noon. And for those of you that are going to be watching or are here, but also going to be watching this on Facebook, this is a church update meeting for Living Word Christian Center so that we can figure out what we're doing and how we're going to compensate and what our future looks like because of some changes that we're going to have to make. Nothing tragic, but some things that are definitely different. I want to, first of all, open by saying these have been really difficult, interesting, trying, and in some ways, blessings the last few months. It has been a mixed bag, and it was kind of similar to what we read about with Esther. None of us did anything to deserve COVID, that's for sure. It was one of those things that God allowed and arranged to happen for whatever reason. And for our particular church, on the positive side, like I mentioned during the announcements, some people have got more serious about their faith now than they ever have been. I'm certain some, maybe not from our congregation, have kind of fallen away a little bit. God calls that separating the wheat from the chaff, or also using fire to refine us as gold and silver. So there have been blessings and difficulties all the way through this whole thing. And so I want to emphasize one thing. I tried my best to keep in contact with a lot of people through this period of time, especially the last few weeks. And what I realized was that our society's never gone through anything like this before. We're fairly fortunate. The church has been persecuted throughout the world in ways that we can't even imagine. What I mean, like, for example, it's still illegal to go to church in China. It's illegal to have a Bible, those kinds of things. And to say, for example, that they're somehow sinning because they're not assembling together on a Sunday morning because they're afraid of the government and they're meeting quietly someplace else, that's crazy. It's just crazy stuff. But we've never experienced that. So what I wanted to do in talking with people, I wanted to give us a perspective about the individuals. And so I'm not going to take very long. The individuals in our church of what some of us are facing. And I say some of us, and I remember my second grade teachers told me, before you point your finger at somebody, remember there's always three fingers pointing back at you. So when I mention other things about the people, it really does apply to me also. Let me give you some examples of what some of our people have to face, similar to like Esther. Our people had to face, and pastors that we know had to face, and churches had to face, because we've answered these questions differently for different reasons. For example, in our church, small as we are, we have a significant number of healthcare workers here, a significant number. I mean, whether you are an LPN or a registered nurse or an aide or an elder caregiver or a dental hygienist or assistant, whatever it is, those people have to think twice about going to a service that may not be completely kosher. Kosher is probably the wrong word. That's more like Esther, But that there might be something that's prohibited. You could say. And we're not going to get into constitutionality. I'm not going to get into the law. But very few churches, if any, are able to abide by all of the rules. They're enormous. And we have particular interesting problems here, which I'll mention later. But if everything's not up to notch, let's say, I'll go on. Healthcare workers, they really have to think twice about it, because if they get reported by an employee that's not happy with them, or if they've got an overly aggressive boss that's looking into things, they may have to take 14 days off without pay to quarantine and get reprimanded. People are going through that in our community. Okay, it's not easy. It's not easy to do. Also, if you work for the government, if you work for the city, the county, the state, or the federal government, there's some situations there that are very uncomfortable. If you go to a service that is not completely qualified, and we're not able to do that here. There are families that are in a situation where grandparents going to a church service are not allowed to see their grandchildren, because the parents of the grandchildren know they go to a service that's supposedly not completely kosher, so they won't let them see it, and vice versa. Adult grandchildren aren't allowed to go see their grandparents because the people are in between. That's how different situations are. There are people that say, hey, to a pastor, I'd love to be there, but can't. I have to not see my grandchildren. And I'm the only Jesus those grandchildren are ever going to see. So right now, I am going to make the choice not to go to church so I can see my grandchildren and hopefully influence them for the Lord. So there's different things that happen. Of course, you may live with elderly parents at home and with comorbidities, those kind of things. Just your personal health situations make it different, make it difficult. And we had some challenges here. People say, well, why haven't you met? Other churches are meeting. Thank goodness most of you called me. And yes, they were long conversations. Because the answers to these questions were almost always the same. I never thought of that. No one was being malicious, but I never thought about our healthcare workers, what they would have to choose. I never thought about the single mom who's a dental hygienist that has 3 kids. And if she gets permanently laid off or laid off just for 14 days quarantine, that's going to sink her. It's going to sink her completely. They didn't think about those kinds of things. And the more that I talk to people, realize, I never thought about so-and-so. I never thought about so-and-so. I never thought about so-and-so in those situations. So it's difficult. But one thing that we probably really didn't think about, and I thank all of you for your patience throughout all this and your support, is that those of you, maybe I don't say it enough, or maybe we don't present it enough, but I am a bivocational pastor. Bivocational. That means, in the old terms, they used to call it tent making. The Apostle Paul, when he went into an area, he would make tents, mend tents, and then he'd make his money that way, and then he would go preach. And until enough funds came in. Well, I am a bivocational pastor. Always have been. For the first number of years, I volunteered. Then I owned my own business and worked for the church 1 day a week, got paid for that. And then I sold my business, merged my business, and then worked 4 days a week for another company, same company I'm working for now. But currently, and for a long time, I have been working 3 days a week for the church, technically 3 days a week, budget-wise. If you look at 5 days a week being full-time, then 2 days a week I worked for a place called the Appliance and Refrigeration Hospital in Vancouver on Mondays and Tuesdays. That is the gig. That's what God has allowed arranged for me to do. And we, as the eldership, have oftentimes, from the very beginning, said, is it God's will for me to be full-time, or shouldn't I be full-time? And I just want to do what God wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. My original plan, maybe a little bit in error, that I was going to volunteer for a long time, hire a youth minister first, hire administrator first, hire a secretary first, all those kind of things. Right or wrong, doesn't make any difference. But right now, I'm currently bivocational. Now, I'm not a healthcare worker, okay? But what I do on my job, and this is where I'd never thought about that before, I am in 8 to 10 homes on Mondays and Tuesdays, private homes. I'm into 8 to 10 private homes every Monday and Tuesday. Private homes, in their kitchens, in their utility rooms. I am handling and working on their refrigerators, their ranges, their dishwashers. I am there. If I attend, and I hate to be the blanket, the wet blanket on our church services, but one of the main reasons we couldn't meet, besides our building issues, we got all kinds of building issues. The rules are interesting. I probably won't even get into them. I couldn't attend a prohibited service on Sunday and go work in people's homes on Monday and Tuesday. I'm putting my boss, who has been wonderful to me and to us, at great liability. And I am breaking the trust of the people that I walk into their homes who are expecting me to be honest, sincere, straightforward, and do what's right. Many of them would not want me in their home if they'd known that I attended, let alone led, a prohibited service. And I say prohibited versus illegal. That's a definition of terms. Don't worry about it. But so I could not do that. It would put my boss at a huge liability, and it would bring disgrace. Because even if it wasn't me, if I walk into an elderly couple's home who's in their, I'm 60, so I guess I'm elderly now. So 70, 80 years old, 90 years old, like my wonderful father-in-law who was here at 93 or 94. If I walk into their home and I'm one of the few strangers to go to their home and they get COVID, they could have caught it from their kids. But guess who's going to get looked at? Guess who's going to get contact tracing? It's going to be that dude that came from the appliance refrigeration hospital that worked on the dishwasher or worked on the refrigerator, and they're going to contact my boss, and then we're going to find out that, oh, he's a pastor, and he was at church. He's one of those Christians who think they're above it all. I couldn't do it. I could not, in good conscience, put my boss in that kind of liability, and let alone bring disgrace upon the ministry, whatever it might be. So, technically, I am the reason. I am, me, personally, am the main reason that we haven't been meeting. It's me. We are the elders who had a choice. Get a new pastor, okay? Someone that would work part-time and do this. Not a good choice. And by the way, we are an elder-run church. Not one man runs this church, but we're an elder-run church, and we look for complete unity in decision-making processes. And we struggle with things. And some tell me, you just got to have enough faith. You just got to quit your job. Burn the plow. That's an old term that Elijah did. Burn the plow, and just God will provide. Okay, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I just didn't. Maybe I did have not enough faith. Not sure, but that wasn't an option. So technically, for all of you that didn't know or do know, the main reason that we weren't meeting was because of me. Now, I believe that it is correct for Christians to do what you would call civil disobedience when the situation is right, okay? There's no doubt in my mind about it. Now, what those situations are, I'm not going to go into details. We can talk about that later. But I believe that it came to a point in which these churches were correct in opening. They were correct. Now, they have to do it the right way as best as possible, but even if they couldn't meet all those standards, I believe they did the right thing, because a lot of it wasn't based on, they say it's based on science. It wasn't based on all the science, okay? Not even a million years was it based on all the science. And it's also okay for a Christian to do civil disobedience when the cure is worse than the disease. More people in the long run and short run are being hurt by that first 6-month lockdown than you'll ever imagine. The voluntary procedures, what are they? Medical procedures. Elective procedures, right? Colonoscopies, elective procedure, okay? Breast exams, elective procedures. You can name these things, and we know almost within less than 0.5% of how many cancers have been missed. We know that. And they're not counting them, let alone the depression, let alone all the other things that have happened. There are people that haven't gone to the doctor because they're afraid to, and what turns out to be early stages of minor stroke and heart attack. So when things are going crazy, it's okay. So my point being is, it's okay that some of the churches are open. And it's okay if some of them aren't. It's okay that ours wasn't. By the way, I took 2 weeks vacation to have this service. Gave me 14 days if I needed it, right? 14 days, 2 weeks vacation, 14 days. So, and we almost didn't have the service. If it wasn't for Bill, we probably wouldn't have. He insisted, and realized, wow, this is. I can do this. I can pull this off. We can do that. So we're in a very odd situation in where we're in what we're doing, and so we know it's probably going to happen again. The next disease that comes up, I'm going to be in the same situation. So we had to figure out a way for us to be able to stay your pastor, and for us to be able to meet when the next thing comes and the governor or whoever else decides to go ahead and shut things down again, and I'm not going to be able to work. And so this is part of what it is that we are to do. The elders are directing the affairs of the church, and we're doing our best to take care of the flock that God set before us. We read these scriptures every time we meet, and wanting to do what's right. And let me, I might not be able to get through this, but let me read this my personal statement. By the way, I'm not leaving the ministry, okay? All right, and I'll get as I said last time, I'll get to the chase very shortly. And the idea of how we got here is more important than the answer. As pastor, once I know for certain what God's will is, by the confirmation of the unanimous decision of the trusted godly elders and men that God has put around me, once I know that, once I have that confirmation, then there is nothing, and I mean nothing. You guys all know I don't cry and talk. There is nothing that will stand in my way to lead them and the congregation, lead the men and the congregation that God has given us charge over through anything, and I mean through anything. Once I know what God's will is for us, I will do everything in my power, put it all at risk, being willing to sacrifice anything to lead the people of God has put into my care to follow his will, even if it seems illogical, like Gideon. Even leaving everything behind, like Abraham, not knowing where he was even going. Seemingly impossible, like David against Goliath. Shattering life's plans and hopes and dreams, like the young Hebrew girl named Esther. Having to repent of my life, prior life, like Saul, admitting what his past life was wrong, and then became the Apostle Paul. Dream shattering, like Joseph being sold to his brothers. The humiliation of Mary, mother of Jesus, being stigmatized forever, being pregnant out of wedlock to give birth to our Savior. Don't misunderstand me. I do not compare myself to any of these people. I only hope that I live a life worthy of the calling that he's put on my life. So, this decision that we're going to make here in our future plan is going to seem sudden, but it's only quick, it's not sudden, and I can explain. After many years of contemplation, and I mean many years, analysis and consideration that have been prayerful and careful, painfully at times meticulously detailed, and sometimes extremely contentious, gentlemen, because you got to fight for what you believe in, okay? And I told guys, do not cave. Do not cave. All the elders, do not cave. If you don't think something's God's will, do not cave. We're depending on you. Don't cave. Contentious at times. And of course, most importantly, scriptural. The elders of Living Word Christian Center have come to the decision about what's best for our church now and in the future, especially concerning the present circumstances around this COVID-19 and future things like it. Some of us here have gone through this before, something like this before. Some of us have gone through it the wrong way, but some of us have gone through it the right way. At this point, those people that are here who need your help, the rest of you that haven't gone through something like this, stick with us, and you will have. The eldership has decided unanimously that it is best by far, it is the best, the right time, and most importantly, it's God's will for our church to join forces and blend with another one. Okay? Yes, to carefully, and I use the word lightly, merge with another church. That's going to allow me to be full-time. What the details are, I will be an associate minister. We're going to be joining with Calvary Chapel over in, it's technically Calvary Chapel of Longview, but Calvary Chapel, it's over in the next to the Elks where the old Kesslers used to be. Now, why that church? This was not decided overnight. And in fact, this exact decision, we started almost 3 years ago and shelved it about a year ago because we didn't figure it was God's will or it wasn't God's timing. Because we're serious about it. We talked about it. This kind of thing has also been mentioned 15 years ago. Why aren't we growing? Our building's a problem. We know that, and parking's a problem, and all those kinds of things. But this is not an overnight decision. This decision was actually painstakingly gone through and shelved until this thing came up, and my situation rose to the top. That I would be what's better for our congregation, for us to keep meeting online, or hit and miss, And so after having gone through all that, that's what we're looking at. That's what we are going to do. The elders need to obey God's word, follow biblical principles, see how the Holy Spirit's leading, directing the affairs of the church, focusing on protecting and feeding and leading the flock, both long-term and short-term. We've been discussing an exit strategy, which I didn't want to talk about, an exit strategy for me. I mean, I am 60, but I'm planning on doing this until the day I die. But somebody may not want me to the day I die. It's a joke in my family. I know it's not funny. Yes, it is funny. It's a joke between my sister and I. Both my parents passed away in their mid to late 60s. So she and I figured we probably only have about 5 or 6, 7 years at the most. But look, I know. But it's a reality, and it's a reality is the thing. And so, but these are things that the elders have talked about for years. I mean, we had property picked out on Olive Way. But God didn't open the door. We thought about the super value now, which is now now I'm dating myself. Super value. It's the Goodwill. We had our eyes open, looking for things, but God seemed to stop all of our plans one way or another. And so we just kept on doing what we were doing, having a good time doing it. I mean, we don't have a bad church here. It just maybe it's not good for the future. We just don't know, right? Well, here's why. Here's what happened 3 years ago. This is going to get very personal, okay? 3 years ago, a couple that was here at the church, and they won't mind me using their names, Roger and Lynn Harper. They were very involved here. They helped run audio-visual back here, and she ran the words, and he helped run sound. They felt God calling them, and it happens. It's great. There's good churches in the area. They felt God calling them to a different church, and I asked them which one it was, and it was Calvary Chapel. When we started this church, there was no Calvary Chapel. Had there been, I would not have started a church in town because I knew about Calvary Chapels, and I respected them, okay? 10 years after we started the church here in town, a Calvary Chapel showed up. It was seed planted from one in Vancouver. By the way, one of the backup plans for the elders was if I croaked all of a sudden and they needed to go someplace real quick, well, call Calvary Chapel. They'll send one of their guys over to preach because they got great preachers. So there's been that association there a little bit, and I really respected it. But here's what happened. When Roger and Harper went over there, I knew that there was a split in the Calvary Chapel Association versus the global thing. And I wanted to be sure that church was right. So I gave Lynn, I went on vacation. I sent them a letter of 5 questions to ask that pastor. 5 questions. And I said, if any one of these answers is no, leave. Don't stay. If any one of these answers is no, leave. Because it's not going to go well. And one day after I went on vacation, after I sent them that letter, they evidently walked right into that pastor's office and said, our pastor gave us this list. Right? And he emailed me within 48 hours of them meeting with him or something while I was in Mexico. And his brother, you have to know him, which I didn't know him before. He says, hey, bro, we need to have some coffee sometime when you get back. So that's exactly what we did. We had coffee out at Red Leaf, and I knew he was a good guy because he's drinking Red Leaf coffee. I mean, that's all there is to it, right? We sat and talked for over 4 hours. I know I'm being recorded, so sorry all you pastors out there, but I have a difficult time with a lot of pastors. I do, because it seems like it's the rooster or the peacock thing and all that, and I'm just not into that. I'm just not into that how big this is and all that. And Al wasn't that way at all, and we talked for like 4 hours. Turns out that the church that planted this church, his church, is the one that Kyle and Katie ended up going to before. Kyle and Katie looked all over for churches, right? And of course, Kyle said, well, you know what? Dad was right. We ended up at a Calvary Chapel. And that's why I tell people wherever they go, at least they'll get good teaching. I mean, the music may vary a little bit, wherever it might be. So we met that particular out and talked for 4 hours. The next time I went over to we've been meeting every Thursday, by the way, just for pastoral support. And almost every Thursday, not every Thursday, that's an exaggeration. Most Thursdays, I'd say probably at least 3/4 Thursdays. And so the next week I went over to his place. And had coffee over there. By the way, they have a whole coffee bar. They make espressos. It's called the Mission Cafe. All the money goes to the missionaries. It's pretty darn cool. I walked in and was impressed. But as I walked in, and there's a term, I've never had pulpit envy in my life. Never had pulpit envy, okay? There was a little bit of it when I went to the Nazarene Church and saw their jumbotrons once, but other than that, that was about it. I've been totally happy where I am and what I'm doing, as long as it's God's will. I said, God, do not send me where you're not going to be, and do not let me stay where you're not going to stay. Send me, just be sure. So anyway, I went over to his place, and when I walked in there, it was, I love our church. I like our building. I don't love our building, but I like our building. It's quaint. We use it well. Let's face it, in 15 minutes, we can have this place changed into a smorgasbord place. I mean, come on. What more can you ask for? The tables are underneath the stage. So, but you can't get downstairs and all that. I walked in there, and it was one of those situations where it said, you know, Lord, this is kind of what I was thinking that we might be someday. The way it was arranged, that's all. Well, I drugged the elders over there the following week just to look at it. I mean, they've got guys with radios and with the ERT teams making sure the kids are okay. They got safety bands that the kids can't get stolen by a problematic parent, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And they already had cameras. We had to learn how to do it all. I mean, it was just there, right? And it was done right, you know. And I think, you know, that was interesting. So the elders, that's what began the process of us talking a little bit about it. But here's the kicker. When I came back from that meeting, I'm driving from that church over here to Living Word, and I get up on Grade Street, and there was a very narrow, hopeful moment that my wife and I had, that one of our boys and their wife might move home. Home meaning Longview, Kelso. But of course, it was not to be. We couldn't even lure them in there, you know. It's like, okay. So they're just settled in. And it was Kyle and Katie, by the way. But it was a short window. This is a short window. And I had that hopeful dream like, oh, wouldn't that be cool, you know. But then as I'm driving back to the church here, from there, I realized for the first time in my life, this is going to be hard. It's okay. For the first time in my life, I realized that if any one of my sons and their families moved home, I would honestly have to recommend a church other than mine, because they'd get taken care of better over there because of the families and situations. We have a great church, okay? But I had to realize if I was honest with myself, I'd have to recommend if Grant and Misty ever moved back up here with their boys, if Kyle and Katie ever moved back up here, I couldn't recommend it, number one. I'd have to recommend another church for the first time in my life, number one. I wept like a baby trying to drive back here, driving my truck, and tears are streaming down my face, and I barely got over here. And finally got myself together, walked in the back door, went to my office, but I have to go through the library first, and the phone rings. Phone rings, right? So I pick up the phone, I kind of get myself together a little bit, and the lady says, hey, I'm new in town, and I'm looking for a church. And I start to go into my normal spiel about, hey, we're an interdenominational church. It's a kind of a cross between an Assembly and a Baptist. And then I was checked. I mean, checked. I've never heard the audible voice of God, but I have been checked. I got checked. And I said, where do you live? South Kelso, she said. I said, do you have any kids? Yeah, I have 3 kids, and I'm a single mom. So I said, look, we've got a great church. But honestly, you'll probably be better served over at a place called Calvary Chapel, and it's not very far from where you live. I had to be honest. That took the elders and I on this quest for almost 2.5 years. And we met with their eldership. We met all kinds of things. We looked at it, but something just wasn't right. We couldn't get a unified vote. We couldn't get a unified vote, which is okay. We know that. The Apostle Paul told the Corinthian church, there have to be divisions among you. There have to be. I've heard there are, and there have to be in order to show who's got God's will. So I'd rather have divisions and get it figured out than have everybody agreeing at first. If everybody agrees at first, we could all be wrong. We could all be right, but we're all one way. But when you have a disagreement or opinion and you pray through it and you fast through it and you do what Esther did and all of that, you come to a conclusion. We came to a conclusion that this is how your elders are. They were committed that it was going to be unanimous or nothing. It's that important of enough decision. I may have a little bit to do with that, but it was an important enough decision that it was going to be unanimous or nothing. And we never reached it. It changed. Had a couple of guys at the very beginning says, no way. They became yeses. And some of the guys that were at the very beginning became no's. It was great. It was terrible, but it was great. And so we shelved it because we just thought and we got confirmation from one of their elders over there saying, look, I think it's God's will, but I don't think the timing's right. One of their elders, a little confirmation there. So we just shelved it, absolutely shelved it. And what we said was this: it would have to be unanimous, okay? And the guys, plural, that changed their vote had to have a good reason, not just caving, and God would make it obvious that it needed to be done, and he would somehow make it easier for the congregation to go. Those are the four things we needed. Well, what happened was, because of COVID, because of me, my job, my working, not being able to do it, because of us not meeting for 9 months, it makes that transition not easy, but better. And also knew that short term, our congregation is suffering because of me. Because I can't lead a service, even if it was a matter of the civil disobedience. I couldn't lead the service. So what's better for the congregation? Them to try to find somebody else and me to leave, or then meet with somebody else, or we stay online the whole time? Well, what we realized is that back burner it was way before COVID came that we shelved this thing. We realized this is the answer, and it makes it obvious, because if we do what we do, back then, they needed a worship leader. So I was going to possibly end up leading worship there and all that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, they've hired one, which is great because he's also an audiovisual genius, it seems. I've seen what he did. It's great. It's awesome. And he's a great worship leader. There's a little confirmation there. I went to a conference, and he wasn't leading worship. Somebody else was, but he was the one I was attracted to. Not attracted that way, but attracted as. Sorry about that, Gabe. Sorry, by the way, his name's Gabe. So sorry, Gabe, if you watch this. It was a matter of, he drew me in. When he sang and he led a song, he drew me in. He really drew me in. And I said, I'd like that guy's worship. So make a long story short, they hired somebody, and now they can't afford me. Now they can't really afford me full time. That's right. No. What we're going to do, we're going to use the proceeds of either renting and or selling this building to help support me for however long it takes and get it taken care of. We can do that. And see, so now I'm able to be a pastor. Yes, I'm not going to be preaching every single Sunday, but I'm going to be able to, things like have a round-robin marriage class for 3 months out of the year, every year. Have a new believers class 3 months out of or whatever the timing might be. Have an evangelism class, and I'll be able to teach that. I'll be able to preach anytime Al's gone, that he wants me to, whatever it might be. But we thought, in looking at the big picture, especially for all of these little ones. Thank goodness for the Zabaran clan. All the little ones, they've got a full-fledged youth group going, which we've always kind of farmed that out a little bit. So all I'm saying is that it wasn't an automatic, it wasn't a rash decision. It was really long thought and painstakingly thought out. So the shortest version is this. As wonderful as it was meeting together today, because of my schedule, because of what's going on in my life, today is our last service at Living Word Christian Center. If you want to follow us, and if you don't, if God leads you a different way, that's okay. But if you want to follow the leadership over to Calvary, we're meeting there next Sunday. Okay? I know that's a shock, but sometimes you just got to jump in the deep end. Don't wade in. Don't get your little toes in, that kind of thing. That's where we're at. And we will honestly believe, prayerfully so, that it is the most healthy thing for the church short term now. Before, It wasn't healthy. Might not be healthy short term 2 years ago, because we'd be breaking the church up and all that. But right now we haven't been meeting together, and a lot of you, it's okay, by the way. A lot of you I know have been going to other churches, I don't mind. There's a lot of great Bible-believing churches in town. You're not going to hurt my feelings. The only feelings that I have that get hurt is I can't provide for you what it is that you need. I can't be your pastor as well as I could be. I can't do that. And we can go back and read Esther. For such a time as this. Maybe this is what God has been wanting to do the whole time. I don't know. But we really believe, and it was painstakingly decided upon, that that's what was going to happen. You'll get email, you'll get letters explaining more things in detail. We're going to have a Q&A in a little bit. Don't stop the camera just yet. But we're not going to videotape the Q&A because I want you guys to be free to ask any questions you want. But that's where we have been and where we've been at. So again, it wasn't last minute. It was really well thought out, painstakingly thought out. It just seemed to be the right time, the right place, the right resources, the right moment to be able to do that. Let's pray. Father in heaven, I want to thank you for your love and compassion, and I thank you for these people sticking with us through the thick of it and the thin of it. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to have the kind of support from people who didn't understand, but when they asked me the questions, saying, Nat, I never thought about that. I never put myself in your position, or a registered nurse position, or a massage therapist position, or a child care worker's position. I never thought about that. I never thought about how COVID affected you or them or anyone else. But I see now, I understand. I never thought about that. The patience that these people have had and the willingness to support. Father, I want to thank them because most churches weren't able to make it financially, and ours has been either better or the same as last year. It's just humbling to sit in front of these people and have them show the kind of love and appreciation and support. Help the elders of our church. Help me as their pastor, and I will be their pastor one way or another as long as they want me to. And they're going to have more pastors. They're going to have more support. Yes, I will perform the marriage ceremonies for their children if I'm still around. And I will do whatever I can to make that transition from this wonderful little church, the transition for their lives, the transition for their ministries, the transitions, whatever it might be. And Father, help us, all of us here in this room, not to leave anybody behind. That's the last thing we want to do. So, in Jesus' name, we all said, amen.